This is not a movie poster. It's a promise of what you're going to see. And on YouTube, a thumbnail has the exact same purpose. One image can make a video feel irresistible. The other one completely buries the idea. Which brings up a bigger question. How do you stop guessing what makes people click and start understanding what really speaks to your audience? Because standing out in a crowded feed requires more than just copying outliers. And that's why I had to talk with Josiah, a thumbnail specialist who worked with some of the biggest channels on the platform and doesn't believe in CTR.
It is the most abused metric on YouTube because people don't understand all that goes into it.
We met in New York last year and stayed connected, which feels important to mention here because he's one of the people that really pushed me to develop my style further. So let's look at the reality behind the content to see how he actually makes people click. Josiah, thanks so much for taking the time. Do you have any idea how many thumbnails you've made over your career?
Easily in the thousands. I mean, I want to talk. I tried calculating this at some point last year, and if I'm talking every single option that I've done and A/B tests and everything, it's in the thousands, possibly even tens of thousands of thumbnails. Because there's just, I mean, when you're talking about it over a course of 10 plus years, it's insane how fast it adds up.
So, what makes a good thumbnail? Is that even a question that you can answer?
Yeah, the easiest answer, what makes a good thumbnail, is it's a visual to get somebody to click on a video. That is the point of the thumbnail. And because of that, and maybe we can talk about this even a little bit later, because the thumbnail is the main visual, it's your marketing material for the video. That's where a lot of creators put the blame on a video if it does poorly, or it's also where they put a lot of the success if a video does well, is on the thumbnail because it's a viewer's first impression. Now, there are hundreds of aspects that go into actually creating a thumbnail and a good thumbnail, but at its very basics, it's how can I get somebody to click on this video?
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Very happy to. So, I think that where a lot of creators maybe go wrong is they start to think about thumbnails as, okay, I have to get exactly what this video is about. And oftentimes, what I see, especially for creators just starting out, but it happens at all different stages, right? I've worked with creators who are just starting out a new channel to creators with tens of millions of subscribers, and the basics of a thumbnail is all the exact same thing. It doesn't change from no matter your size, but the issue that I see a lot of times with newer creators is they want to say exactly what this video is about. Exactly. But it's all in the framing. It's all in what is the interesting part of this video that can actually get somebody to click on it. Is it something that may actually happen? This is a very contentious debate oftentimes with creators, something that happens in the initial first few seconds of a video, which is often where I like to lean because you get a very quick payoff, especially in the first few seconds of a video. It makes the viewer extremely satisfied. Sometimes the very interesting part of a video doesn't come until later in the video, which that has other problems in and of itself. But my goal as I'm creating thumbnails is to find out what is the best way to frame this. And that can be many different directions, which is when you talk about the A/B testing, which is one of the most beautiful tools to come out on YouTube in the last few years. A/B testing has made it possible to be able to frame a video in three separate ways, and even beyond that when you're talking about multiple rounds of testing. But when you frame a video in different ways, you're able to get different audiences potentially to click into that. When you think about your core viewers, they like a video framed exactly what they're used to. It's the traditional type of video on the channel. It's the video that they see it, they click it. Maybe there's the exact same text font or text color as before if you put text on a thumbnail. Maybe it's that creator's face that's on a thumbnail. Your core viewers care deeply about that, and you want to do everything in your power to get them to click right away as soon as the video is coming out within the first 24 hours. But then you have new viewers, and new viewers are somebody who may have never seen you as a creator before. Maybe they heard about you if you're a larger creator, maybe they haven't. And so your face on a thumbnail could actually be potentially detrimental to being on there if it's not serving any sort of purpose. And so new viewers are often looking for what I like to dig into, which is like, what is this video about? What makes it
Mm.
interesting? What is this idea that makes them click? And those two framings for those audiences can often be drastically different when you're trying to pull both of them in.
So you said you work with both brand new creators and established creators. And I mean, you work with Theorist, which is a huge media company at this point. How do you go about kind of finding out what the right style is for the channel?
That's a great question. And whenever look at theorists, I'll use them as a great example
Hmm.
because Matt Pat had been creating videos for at that point 10, 12 years. And so he had a very established format about how to create a thumbnail. Now, Matt, over the course of like whenever I was at Theorist, he ended up transitioning out, retiring into the new hosts of all the 5 channels. And the thing that stayed consistent across all of them was the structure of the video, the theories, as well as the thumbnails. And when the thumbnail stays the same, because like Matt was actually this is actually a unique example because he was not on all the thumbnails. It was we were often relying on the idea of the video. And so for theorists, some of the elements that if you look at the channels, right, you look at film theory, there's red text on just about every single thumbnail. Or game
Hmm.
theory, it's the green text. Matt was somebody who really, Matt and Stephanie revolutionized, I would say, green text on thumbnails whenever they ran all these tests and figured out that like that's one of the most clickable colors on YouTube in the gaming niche specifically. But you have that, you have like a character on a thumbnail, and that is something for theorists that works. Now, that just doesn't mean like if you're listening to this, that doesn't mean that that's gospel and that's everything that you need to do on your channel. Oh, now if you just start using green text, that's exactly what works. Not exactly how it works because theorist audience has one specific audience. Your channel may have a completely different audience, and you have to figure out what works on thumbnails for your audience. Now, that could be bright text. That could be no text at all. If you're thinking about the age demographics of your channel, that's the first place I'd look. And actually, maybe a few places I'd start looking if
Hmm.
you're like, how do I figure this out, right? Look at your age demographics on the channel. Who exactly are you serving? Look at the gender demographics as well. That's another important factor, right? If you're serving a very female audience versus a very male audience, again, completely different ways to get those demographics to click. Same thing with a 65-year-old man versus a 13-year-old girl. Like they're into very different types of content, and so you have to have your thumbnail serve them. And the best way to figure that out is through continuous testing.
Mm.
What I like to do is have a thumbnail in just about every round of testing that's very traditional. It's this is the thumbnail that works on the channel. I also like to have a very experimental thumbnail. Something where maybe I'm testing a couple of variables, a couple of tweaks to see if I'm trying to advance the style of the channel or figure out what my style is. Then I start to recognize patterns. Okay, if on every single thumbnail, I have I'm making something up here, but I have 2 different people on a thumbnail,
Hmm.
and I have that wins every single time against a thumbnail that has just one person. And if I see a continuous pattern of 2 people, 2 people, 2 people, 2 people winning every single time, okay, that starts to become a very traditional type of thumbnail on the channel. That doesn't mean you should never test having one person on the thumbnail again, but you start to recognize those patterns, right?
A lot of good stuff in there, a lot of very interesting stuff in there. Because I mean, one thing that is so common across YouTube, and what you kind of alluded to, is like there's this thumbnail style that works, quote unquote, and then it just gets copied across every niche, every format. and you don't even know where it came from, right? This works for Mr. Beast. This works for Diary of a CEO. It must work for me. Um, but in reality, that's not really the case. So how do you go from copy and pasting something to like really developing your own style? I guess is the question.
That's an excellent point. And where that a lot of this, what I've pinpointed a lot of this to, is a Colin and Samir interview that they did with Jimmy. I want to say it was 5 or 6 years ago at
Mm-hmm.
this point. And Patty Galloway was another interview that they had done, and a lot of that, between that and the interviews with John Yoshai, there was this conversation that they had about finding outliers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And outliers weren't really a thing before 2020. I mean, like there were a couple creators who were like kind of looking at it, doing it. They may have not even known exactly what it was called, but it blew up after that interview where every single person was like outlier, 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 outlier. And I just like heard it chattering all around
Mm-hmm.
me. And what a lot of those people missed was the basics of things. And I'll give you this very specific example here where this happened, I want to say over the last year, where Stephen Bartlett was actually talking about how he revolutionized getting new subscribers onto his channel
Mm-hmm.
and like just getting a ton of new subscribers. And the thing that he said was, oh, I have 70% of you aren't subscribed. So if that's one of you, make sure you subscribe. He found that to be very successful for his channel. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then everywhere I look and everywhere I hear, I see all of these creators copying that exact thing. But they missed the point. The point that he was actually making was when you say the same exact thing of like, subscribe, comment, which has its own issues.
Yeah.
When you say the exact same thing, it becomes white noise.
Yeah.
So instead of copying exactly what somebody else does, you have to find a new way to stand out. And so that's exactly what creators like Mr. Beast now and Ryan Trahan are doing with their thumbnails, where they are pioneers in thumbnails on YouTube. And because of that, when you are a pioneer, when you are the person who is driving a lot of those outliers and everybody else to kind of copy you, you have to find a new way to stay ahead of the game. And so those two right now are actually looking. If you look at all their channel and some of their recent videos and even back catalog videos, what they're doing actually is going from that what a lot of people call like the beastified or YouTube face thumbnails into the very realistic type thumbnails. It feels almost like I wouldn't quite call it a screenshot, but what I like to call like a polished screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ryan was, I would say he leaned a lot more towards a very realistic thumbnail style before, but he's taking that to the umpteenth level where it does feel like this is a straight up moment from the video where I'm clicking in to find. And now that is something that stands out. So when people zig, they zag, and now they got to find another way to, I don't know, what do they say, zop?
One thing I observe with that is that, in very broad terms, the thumbnail advice is to be very easy to scan, give the person a reason to click, put some value in it, and like have it, a nice polished frame. But I've noticed that there is a really big difference between boys YouTube and girls YouTube, to split it like really like center, because like a lot of like female creators, vloggers, their thumbnails are absolute mess. There is like 17 photos in one frame, three different fonts, and then a cutout of the person. And so objectively, most advice would be like, this is a horrible thumbnail, this is not going to get any views. But then you look at it, it's like 500,000 views, a million views. I'm like, okay, it works for that group of people.
It absolutely does. And you look at creators who are like the female creators who are doing especially well, and there are plenty of them out there, but a couple that really come to mind, right? You look at a Hope Scope,
Hmm.
a who honestly her thumbnails lean a little bit more into the YouTubeified style of thumbnails. And but you have like a Mia Maples or a Sophia Nygaard, right? There again, there are plenty of them out there, but then I'm even thinking about the very like I don't have a name for them, but I know their style of content, that maybe they have like 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 subscribers, and they have, cursive text
Yes,
across their
exactly.
thumbnail that's in like a kind of arc, and then they have like a collage of photos. And what I did to understand that, because I was similar to you, I'm like, how do these work? Like this isn't a, again, it's not a traditionally good thumbnail if you're looking at like the rules and the basics, but it's working for them. So obviously something's good about it. What I like to do is I like to talk to the people in my life, who aren't into YouTube,
Hmm.
and show them thumbnails, show them videos, say like, what do you like about this? And not be like, hey, is this good or bad? But just be like, hey, if you're looking at these two thumbnails right here, which one stands out to you? And oftentimes the woman in my life who are looking at that is like, oh, I really like that one. It's like, it's cute, it's pretty, it's whatever it is. And I start to get an understanding of what makes them click. Because if, again, going back to like it, your specific channel, you have to understand who your demo is, and
Hmm.
you have to get inside that person's mind. Oftentimes too many creators just, they sit in their bedroom, they create videos without doing any talking to their audience or understanding their audience. And sure, you can talk in the comments, that helps immensely, and that's more than doing anything else. But getting out there, like kind of in real life, and meeting your audience, or at least meeting the demographic and talking to them, you start to develop this understanding of, who they are. I think one of the things this reminds me a lot of on style theory, back whenever I was working at Theorist, we were looking at adjusting the audience, because we went from a male host with Matt Pat into a female host with Amy currently, who's the host. And the audience demographic started to shift on the channel, because it was a mostly heavily male channel, like, who watched, into, okay, now there were a lot of females who wanted to start coming in and watching Amy on style theory. And so we had to figure out how to adjust the thumbnail style from,
Mm.
how do we get essentially, guys to click, to how do we get girls to click. And some of those things, that's like one of the things that I really did was poll a lot of people, question them, understand them. What did they like about the thumbnails? What didn't they like? What was off putting, right? Bright green text. That's not what we were doing on Style Theory. But if we were, like, that's not something that stands out to females
Hmm.
most of the time, or at least to most of them. It's a pastel color. It's a very more muted color that isn't like aggressive, I would say, right? So it's like understanding all of that.
One thing that Josiah and I keep coming back to in this conversation is that creators really don't need to guess, not just with thumbnails, but with their whole channel. Because your best videos already contain clues about what your audience cares about, what they clicked on, and what they actually want more of. So if you've been uploading for a while and still feel like every video is a gamble, I have a free one-page YouTube strategy for you. It helps you review what already worked, build momentum from those signals, and decide when to repeat and when to experiment so you can take bigger swings. The link for that is down in the description. You mentioned the demographic and your audience a few times, and I think I want to dig into a little bit the strategy part. But before we get there, I'm just curious, do you have any way of saving or bookmarking thumbnails, kind of creating a collection of inspiration? Or do you draw inspiration not from thumbnails?
Oh yeah. This is probably my favorite question that we dive into in this conversation,
Okay.
because and I've loved everything so far, if you couldn't tell. So one of the first question about, like, where do I store stuff?
Hmm.
I have a file on my desktop where I'd call it Brain Blast. Other people call it, right, like a swipe file or
Yeah.
something. Like in How to Steal Like an Artist, which I have that book back here. Love
Yep.
that book. But I just have a file on my desktop, Brain Blasts, for every little type of inspiration that I have, whether it's for some sort of idea that I have for creating content, for a LinkedIn post, for a thumbnail. I want to have that stored somewhere, so I can just, like, if I'm feeling like out of it, I can just dive in. Or sometimes I will find an inspiration for something and come back to it 6 months later where I'm like, oh, boom, I'm working with, a sports creator. And I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for that. And so I have that folder. But one of the biggest traps that I see people falling into, and this isn't just YouTube, it's with any type of skill or art or something that you're trying to advance yourself into, is you pay attention to only your lane. So, for example, there are YouTubers, if you're just watching YouTube, you're missing out on so much media. You're
Hmm.
missing out on so much more that's happening in the world. It's important to pay attention to the trends on YouTube and see how thumbnail styles are adjusting, how audiences are reacting to things. But it's even more important to get out of YouTube, stay off of the platform for a day. Find inspiration anywhere. My One of my philosophies is you can find inspiration anywhere. I have this series of books over here with advertisements dating back to the 1920s. It is probably 10,000 pages of ads
Wow.
looking at that, because guess what? While your favorite creators getting ideas from another YouTuber, I'm looking at trying to find something that is completely new and unique from some ad from 1930 that nobody and their mother has looked at in over 100 years, right?
Hmm.
That's what I'm trying to look for inspiration. Is ads is often a place I'll go to. Billboards. I've grabbed a bunch of thumbnail inspiration from billboards that I've used before. As crazy as it is that people are still advertising on them, they still have to find a way to get your attention. And another one of my favorite places is movie posters, right? The point of a movie poster is the exact same point as the thumbnail. The point of a movie poster is to get you excited to come in to see a movie and get across the point of the movie. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about movie posters in recent years too, and the number of elements that are on them and everything. But and so like I'll look at those, but I'll even go back to 80s posters. I think that was an iconic
For
era
sure.
of movie posters, 70s and 80s. And so I'll look for that as well. But then there's just like everyday life. One of my favorite inspirations that I grabbed was I was on a trip out in Maine, and I was walking near a construction site, and there was a giant poster about like, hey, here's all the construction gear to wear. And it had a construction worker with like little kind of lines coming off of him. It's like, here's the helmet, here's the gloves, here's the vest. And I'm like, ooh, that can make a pretty cool thumbnail. So you can get inspiration anywhere.
Do you have any examples that you remember where you pulled from those magazines that like turned into a real thumbnail?
Oh yeah, I can. My favorite one. I'll go with the Billboard one, because that's one that
Sure.
really stands out to me. And I also saw an ad for this in one of those books as well.
Hmm.
But this is a crazy one. But we were doing a food theory for something about how the size of your plate like affects your
Yeah.
portions, like and how you psychologically think about eating food.
Yeah.
I'm butchering the psychology of that right now, but I was like, ooh, what's interesting about this is it's not really that can get very very complicated, and that's oftentimes right. A video on complex matters, on psychology, on science, on engineering, on these different things can be very difficult to distill. But my job as I'm thinking about thumbnails, and your job as a creator, is to distill that into as easy of a manner to understand as possible. Oftentimes you'll hear it's like, hey, let me distill it down to the level of a fifth grader so that it's easy to understand. Not to dumb it down by any means, but to make it simple to understand. Because people who, let's say, aren't as smart, it's easier for them to understand. But then people who are like the super intelligent type people, they like things very very quickly too. And so when I'm thinking about these things, I'm like, how can I distill down this idea of like plates and portions? And it's not a clickable thing. Oh, what is interesting is size matters.
Hmm.
And I drove by this billboard every single day for 6 months. I also saw it on an ad in one of those books that said size matters. It was for a law firm of all things. And I'm like, that is great text for a thumbnail. Threw that right up there, and then had this like tiny little plate that is, again, contradictory to everything that you would hear on YouTube of like, hey, have giant things in your face, make sure that you can see it. I'm like, hey, what's the thing that goes against that? I'm going to use this tiny, tiny little plate with a giant text that says size matters. Boom. And it ended up doing decent, honestly. I can't remember the exact views of it now, but that's one that comes right to mind.
I love that example. Yeah, and I notice it more and more. Like the more inspiration you can draw from outside, the more interesting I think your imagery is going to be. Let's dig a little bit into the strategy part because, like you said in the beginning, you don't just care about thumbnails, but like about kind of the bigger picture of it all. And I'm just going to pose the seemingly simple question of what is content strategy for you?
Content strategy, I think it all boils down to one simple question, which is how good is this idea?
Hmm.
And how do we get that idea out to more people? That and more people varies on your channel size,
Yeah.
right? It varies on your niche. It varies on how big you want to grow. There are some creators out there, you look at Mr. Beast, right? He's trying to reach every single person on the planet. That is the 0.0000001% of YouTubers who are trying to do that. And a matter of fact, I wouldn't even necessarily recommend that you do that. Most people would say don't do that. Niche down, do all this different stuff.
Hmm.
But that's him, right? He's trying to do that. And so his strategy is much different from somebody else's, but it still boils down to how do we create a banger idea and how do we reach as most people within our niche, within our lane as possible? And once you ask that question, then everything else just becomes like deeper from there, right? Okay, well, how can we adjust our thumbnail strategy to reach more people? When you look at people who are doing, let's say the dubbing, right? Or trying to reach people in different languages and reach a bigger audience that way. That's one specific strategy to start looking at, okay, well, our thumbnails have text on them.
Hmm.
Well, that's English. Not everybody in the world speaks English, so maybe we should start taking our text off of there. That's one specific lane of content strategy. You start looking then at another avenue. Okay, well, there's been a massive surge in TV viewership over the last few
Yes.
years, with YouTube becoming the top streaming platform for viewership, right? Over Netflix, over HBO, over everything else. And so how do we reach as many TV viewers as possible with our video ideas? And those thumbnails may be slightly different from your mobile thumbnails, where viewers are just scrolling. On a TV, you have a more relaxed experience. You're also, you think about this on your phone, you're oftentimes looking right here. Okay, you can see everything. On your TV, you're about 10 feet away. So you have to make sure things are big for viewers to actually be able to see. And that's just the thumbnail part of side of content strategy,
Yeah.
right? Then you start looking at your retention charts and seeing, okay, how do we continue to reach as many people as possible by having them not click away from a video? What did I say or do on my video to make people click away? And all of this, and then there's analytics as well, which is one of my favorite parts of YouTube Studio, is the number of analytics they provide. Thank you, YouTube, for continuing to do that. All of this kind of boils down to as well, what went right, what went wrong. What went right with my last upload that I can do again? What went wrong with my last upload that I need to improve? And as long as you continuously make those 1% improvements over time, your content strategy just continues to get better and better and better.
There's a few things I want to dig into. I guess let's start with the basic of it's about having a good idea because that is probably the most basic advice for anybody selling anything, but in particular on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
And that is a great soundbite that, like, yes, of course, you just need good ideas, but like, I'm a kind of a person who has like a million ideas a day, and like every single one of them sounds great the moment I have it, but then the next morning was like, nah, it's all trash. So, do you have any systems to like actually validate an idea?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, right? You hear different people talking about things on X or LinkedIn, and it's like it all seems like simple, like, okay, eye roll advice. Okay, you just need a good idea. Okay, cool, but how do I do that? And then, like, but really it does boil down to that. And I would say I relate to, I was listening to this Callaway interview a few months ago where he just said, like, okay, I just kind of have this gut feeling.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's something that like Jimmy has said in the past too, where he's like, I just kind of have this gut feeling about things. And that's true too. I do just have that as like, this is a good idea. But that comes from a lot of repetition, right? Doing things over and over and over again and seeing, like, okay, this one bangs, this one doesn't. This one was completely like tanked the channel. This one completely like hit. But when I'm talking about like systems of things, there are a few things that I take in mind when I have an idea. And I'm like you as well, where I find it super important to have, I call it a brain blast session,
Yeah.
where I'll spend an hour locked into a room, nothing around me, no phone, sometimes a computer if I need it for research, but like nothing else up on my screen,
Mhm.
no distractions. Oftentimes I like to, light a candle or something just to kind of get me going
Love it.
and just start banging out ideas, anything that comes to mind. And by the end of that, it's usually an hour or two. I'll have about 100 to 200 ideas. And I would love to, make all of those. Just like you said, it's like I have all these ideas, but then I'll let them sit a little bit. I'll come back to them and I'll see, okay, which one of these ideas is going to be able to get the most people to click into it. So it's an idea that is universal to people. It's also easy enough to
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm.
So, if you want to reach a universal audience, or even if, let's go niche, right? You want to talk to an audience who's 30 years old into sports. Okay, is that idea easy enough for them to understand about that or not? And that may be completely different idea than somebody who's, making video game type content. Then the other thing I'm asking is, can this actually be an interesting video? What is there to say about this topic or idea, or do? What I'm like thinking of the structure oftentimes in my head of like, okay, here's what we can do in this video. Or is this a great idea, but it's not for a piece of long form? It's, for a short. And oftentimes what I'm also thinking about is the framing of things, the packaging, the title and the thumbnail, and like the first 10 seconds, 30 seconds of a video is what I'm thinking about there. Is this interesting enough for that? And probably even more importantly, if I told somebody about this video, right? I come out of one of those brain blast sessions. If I told somebody about this video, I told a friend about it, would they be like, oh, that's kind of cool? Or that's interesting? Or I want to see that? Or are they just like, that's boring? Or like, or oftentimes I would even say, if they're like, wait, I don't get it. But that's not a good idea then. If they don't understand it instantly, it's not enough to do something like to be a good idea.
I mean, yeah, it's always a good idea to like show it to actual people and see how they react. Not always the easiest thing. Are you familiar with Annie Austin?
Yes.
Because he's been making videos for a really long time, and the videos he's making haven't really changed. But at some point, it really launched into a new category of viewership. And I'm trying to find that moment to see if something changed there.
Interesting. I
But that is
I'll pull up his channel right
maybe
now.
that's a side quest for another time.
I'm curious about it too, because
It might be, this is a very quick observation, it might
yeah,
be tied to putting himself in the frame, in the thumbnail. Most of the older thumbnails is just like a game screenshot and some kind of game text.
yeah.
And then the newer ones of like all the strange video game essays, like where do Skyrim servers come from? You see him in the frame.
You're right. I think this is actually a really interesting like since we both have the channel up and we're looking at it, and I'm looking at that exact same time period from like about 1 to 2 years ago,
Yeah.
where he goes from Saffron City has a 3.6% unemployment rate, which has 200,000 views, into the next video, the details racing games want you to ignore,
Hmm.
1.9 million views. And I would say this is a really interesting conversation topic here because one, I think you were like, you're right, and like, okay, he added himself to a thumbnail, but I think it goes even a little bit deeper than that,
Hmm.
because I see the title, Saffron City has a 3.6% unemployment rate, and first of all, I'm like cool, bro, like what does that mean? like, uh,
Mm. It
I
also changes
sure.
from a statement to a question.
Yes. And so it's these little psychological details that, like, if I read a title and I'm like, cool, bro, I don't really care to click deeper, or if you give me an answer. And I think it's also in the framing, right? You look at that thumbnail, which for anybody like listening and not looking at the channel, it's that Saffron City one. It has these two Pokemon characters who, one, I don't think they're even the main characters. It's kind of a strange looking thumbnail, but it feels like it's going to be a, hey, you're just like it's some random guy just talking. There's going to be a lot of like B-roll footage versus the upcoming thumbnails after that, like where do Skyrim's rivers come from, where he's standing in one of the Skyrim's rivers. And one interesting question, I'm like, oh, I don't know where they come from. It makes me want to find out, click to find out. But it also, him standing there with a microphone gives me an understanding of like, oh, this is going to be one of those like newer style videos where it's a guy talking maybe in front of his green screen. It's not just the B-roll. It's a completely different framing and understanding of it. And I think that it seemed like he had some sort of realization or shift in his packaging there.
Hmm.
And that's, I mean, where his stuff just started like going off.
Dude, thanks for those insights that I didn't see at first glance, which kind of opens up another question I like to ask, which is, what do you see as the difference between the creators that quote unquote make it, that kind of break through, and the ones that just kind of fade away?
Great question. It the creators who make it, the biggest thing is they have a drive and a passion unlike anybody else I've seen.
Hmm.
And again, there's not, I think a lot of people are looking for like a secret answer. It's like they you know watch these type of videos, or they read these types of books, or they this or that. And like, sure, that's just a byproduct of their passion. And you can feel it coming off of them. There was a moment in Ryan Trahan's 50 State
Hmm.
series last year where, and it's funny that he included it in the video, but he pulled over. He was like, Ryan, I don't remember what video or state it was in, but he pulled over on the sidewalk because he had to get a thumbnail done that he was editing, for his series
Okay.
in order to have it done in a few days. Creators of that size oftentimes, right, they have teams working for them. They have a thumbnail artist or designer. They have editors. They have like these type of people. Ryan's team is small, but like he is the one who's doing that. And to me, that just shows the heart, the drive, and the passion that he has for it. It's not some. He's not in it just to. I think this is another thing. Is he's not in it just for the money or the fame or the fortune or a lot like, I don't really think a lot of the people who are doing it are in it for that.
Hmm.
And, I think another thing is like, oftentimes people associate Mr. Beast and Jimmy with like money, 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 because that's a lot of what he like does. But that I do not think at all, and I think he's even said this in interviews, like that is his driving factor and force. He is somebody who just loves making good videos, and the money stuff, it was just all like ways to make better videos, to be honest with you. And so when I see that, when I see like Jesser, I think he's somebody who's been growing incredibly fast in the last few years. He's been crushing it for years, but he's at like just past 40 million subscribers. He is so passionate about his company and his videos that I don't see that in every single creator that's out there, right? He like just wants to do it for the love of the game. And I think that is one of the biggest things. But if you're looking for something maybe a little bit more tactical,
Mhm.
I think I would say these creators, the thing that separates the top 1% creators is that they're always looking to learn. They never think that they are the best, that they know everything, that they have taken every single thing out there, even on videos where they've had millions and millions of views on. It's not that it's not good enough. It's that they think that they can improve and get better. Just like any athlete out there who's, you look at like a Tom Brady, it's like he could have
Mhm.
been done after one Super Bowl. He kept going and winning more and more and more. And he kept getting better and better and better. And that's what separates the 1% YouTubers from the people who fade away. They don't want to keep learning.
That's so interesting. One thing that I observe is that there's, like, I totally agree on the learning aspect. And I think a result of that is there's always a little bit of change happening. There's always a little bit of continuous development happening.
Yes.
At the same side, kind of, there's a lot of smaller creators or people getting into the space who kind of change too frequently, like try too many things. So I don't know, do you have any kind of rubric or any kind of system to know when to test things for a while and when to pivot?
Oh yeah, this is great, and again, it reminds me when you talk about like the pivoting. It's important for all creators to pay attention to what is happening on the platform in general.
Hmm.
When you look at the longevity of certain channels, right, with Matt and Stephanie, like on Theorist, like they were looking to. They started in 2012, and they're continuing on to today with new hosts because of the fact that they paid attention to these little shifts on the platform, and they could have faded away into like, hey, no, we don't care about you anymore, but they paid attention. Smosh is another one,
Yeah,
right? And I know that they had their ups and downs over the years too,
big
right?
ones.
Big ones, right? And that's okay, but again, they learned from it. They grew, they got better, and they're back, and I would say even better than ever. Mythical, another excellent example of a creator who had longevity and adjusted with the platform versus, let's just say, Epic Mealtime. And I love Epic Mealtime, and I would not like I would not speak bad about them because I love what Harley did. He's
Yeah,
like
but
him and Epic
they
Mealtime
had
are
a
some of the
time, and
yes.
that was the end of the story.
Right, and they because of the fact that, like, they didn't do those little adjustments, and so when you're asking, right, how do we experiment without having one video that's about sports, another video that's about, a travel vlog to Argentina, and another video that's about, like, what is the best water bottle, right? It's
Yeah.
like, that's all over the place. And maybe that's very extreme. But one, I would say, as a new creator, it's okay to do because you're trying to figure out what is the content that you want to be producing, that you're good at, that you can see yourself doing for 1, 5, 10 years, that you enjoy doing, that you're passionate about, but there's also an audience for. And so you're trying to find that out in the beginning stages of any channel. And that's why, like, for me, I started like multiple channels like ages ago just to figure out. Now they were each like niche into specific things, but I was experimenting, right? Then once you sort of have a rhythm going, right? Let's say that you have a channel about running shoes, and like that's all the channels about it is running shoes, and you're doing shoe reviews. That's every single video. It does not make sense at that point to then have a video about a dog and teaching new dog tricks because the audience is used to you putting out content about shoes and shoe reviews. So how do you pivot something like that? How do you experiment on a channel like that?
Hmm.
Well, one, I mean, I'm thinking of a couple of different lanes. One, okay, these are very athletic people potentially who are watching this type of channel. Could you have some sort of uh, Could you have some sort of, you could do some sort of vlog, which is interesting. You could do, I'm thinking like of a Cleo Abrams style video where it's experimental, but like you're going to like Nike's shoe factory,
Sure.
right? And you're finding out like what is exactly the inside of these soles and shoes that makes them so much better. Could you do a test between three different types of shoes? Like I'm doing Nike versus Under Armour versus Brooks and seeing which one of these shoes makes me run the fastest. It's not a review per se, but it's a different style of video that you can evolve. How do you do that? Let's say that you're publishing 4 videos a month, one per week.
Hmm.
2 to 3 of those, I would often say should stay traditional. And this isn't an exact like roadmap, like, but it's an example. You have 3 review videos, and then that one is the experimental one. And you have to understand that it is experimental. Your viewers who are used to clicking that on your other stuff, they may not click on this one right away. It may be off-putting to them. So you want to keep as many variables as close as possible. If you just go completely experimental, it's hard to say like what actually shifted the channel, why people did or didn't click. But if you keep a lot of things the same, let's say you have the variables I'm looking at, it's like, okay, thumbnail style. Sure, it's going to be a little bit different, but if you're using a very specific, if you have the host and all the other reviews, the host should probably be in that experimental thumbnail.
Hmm.
If you use a specific, I don't know, channel logo in a thumbnail, you should probably use that also in the experimental video. And then you look into the actual video structure. If you have an intro that you do in every other video, it probably makes sense to do it in that video as well. Now, you can then start evolving that specific format if you turn it into that. But experimenting comes down to honing down as many variables as you can so you can lock in what to do, having expectations of how this content will do, and really having a like a why am I experimenting? Am I just doing this for fun? Am I doing this to try to get more viewers? And then looking at the results and saying, did I actually achieve that result?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Having a good reason why to run this experiment and what is the kind of expected outcome of that. Because it also brings up back the topic of data and like kind of you said earlier, like YouTube gives you so much data and you're thankful for it. Personally, I'm not a numbers person, and I think a lot of people are just overwhelmed with everything you can find in there, and making sense of it is kind of hard. What do you look for in there? Like, how do you see if things are working or not? Beyond
Yeah,
just like view go up, view go down.
it's a great question because it's like you said, some people are numbers people, some people aren't. And so like I look at that and I'm like, I look at those metrics versus like the metrics that TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn give you. And I'm like, those feel archaic compared to YouTube.
Hmm.
There's no other platform on the internet that gives you as many metrics as YouTube does.
True.
Now, I also get what you're saying, where you're like, it can become overwhelming. There's so much happening there without fully understanding it. And my first piece of advice for anybody out there who feels overwhelmed is to ask a question.
Hmm.
Say, here's what I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find out, why did viewers leave my video? Or let's say, what videos of mine had the highest average percentage viewed, so the most people watched this video for the longest amount of time. And then I can go into YouTube Studio, into advanced mode, and find that very specific question. Not even pay attention to anything else, because you're going to be able to get hundreds and thousands of different like questions answered, but just that one. Then I can sort it, see, okay, here are my videos over the last 6 months, 9 months, 2 weeks that had the highest average percentage viewed. There's my answer, and I'm happy with that. And it's slowly understanding that. But to answer your other question about like what am I looking for exactly, oftentimes the first thing I go to is views. It's a simple indicator of, is this video doing well or not?
Hmm.
But even before that, what I recommend is having a baseline understanding of your video performance. Because while 1 of 10 in YouTube is great, it can also be very misleading. Because let's say that you have 10 of 10 videos in a row. Well, eventually the one that comes after that is going to end up being a 1 of 10. And that is a lot higher than like your recent baselines, but it still isn't like as great as your other videos had been in the past.
Mhm.
So I like to have an understanding of what that actually is. I typically calculate that in a separate spreadsheet. It'll take you an hour. You just look at what are my views over a 7 day period of time, and is this video after a 24-hour or 7 day period? How is that actually looking compared to these other videos? Once I have that and I understand the baseline, I'm starting to look at other metrics within there. I am somebody who typically does not, and I know that this is going to sound maybe controversial and crazy for a lot of people. I do not hardly ever look at the click through rate.
Ooh.
And I know it sounds like spicy because it's like the thumbnail guy doesn't look click through rate.
Yeah.
It's because there are hundreds of variables that go into a video's click through rate. Now, I think I will say it's important to have an understanding of it, but your click through rate has so much that goes into it. It's not just is your thumbnail good or bad. It's also is your title good or bad. It's also, hey, when a viewer hovered over a video and it auto played, did they click the video or not? Has nothing to do with the thumbnail potentially. How long is the video? What time of day is that video served to the viewer? Where is that video on the homepage? There are so many variables that go into it, some of which you can control, some of which you can't control. And because of that, the click through rate fluctuates. Plus, one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people miss is that when your impressions go up, so when your video is served to more people, your click through rate naturally goes down because not all of those people are interested, so they're going to click it less. And so you may have an instance where a video has 1 million views and a 4% click through rate, but a video that has 200,000 views has a 10% click through rate. So the click through rate's higher, but the views are lower because and maybe you're hyper serving that audience. So I'm not looking at click through rate as much. I'm looking oftentimes at views, and the average percentage viewed is another big one that I'm looking at a lot. Not the average view duration. I look at it, but it's not as important to me because of the fact it depends on what you're trying to figure out. But like, okay, if I have a video that's an hour long versus a video that's 20 minutes long, the hour long video is naturally going to have a longer average view duration because the video is longer.
Yes.
If I'm comparing apples to apples, if I'm comparing a 20-minute video versus a 20-minute video, it starts to help out. But I like to oftentimes look at the percentage of the video that somebody's watching. So, it would be interesting to me if somebody watched 50% of an hour long video versus 50% of a 20-minute video, because that hour long video is seemingly holding somebody's attention longer. And so then that starts to, send me down all sorts of different rabbit holes. It's the Mark Cuban quote that I like, where he says, "Would you rather have 50% of a watermelon or 100% of a grape?" That's how I look at the average percentage viewed. Where, yeah, I'd much rather have 50% of a watermelon and be happy with it than 100% of a little grape. So it's APV, it's views, and YouTube has done a really good job, I think, over the last few years, helping creators understand this. They give a nice little, like, 110s, like I said, is great to understand at a quick glance. On Studio, if you click into the video, it'll give you a very, very brief understanding of like, hey, this video's views are higher or lower. Here are some reasons why. And then also they've been implementing their AI features, which I've experimented with a little bit. I'm somebody who's very much a numbers guy, so I rely a little bit less on that. But I think that it is very helpful for creators who may not be in the weeds of everything too much. Hopefully that wasn't too analytical
No,
of a
I
breakdown.
just have too many follow-up questions to that. I'm going to ask the simple one because I see it pop up all the time on Reddit. Is there a magic CTR number?
Like there's not. I think I tend to avoid Reddit and X and for advice on thumbnails,
Yeah.
just because I don't think a lot of those people have, I don't know, run enough of their own channels. And it's, again, sorry if this is a spicy take, but I don't think they've either run enough of their own channels or seen enough of the metrics. I don't think that there is a magic CTR number, and that's why I don't really pay attention to it. I think it is the most abused metric on YouTube because people don't understand all that goes into it.
Well, at least now we have a good soundbite here. So if you think of somebody who has been on YouTube for a while, who kind of understands the basic, but things haven't quite clicked for them, what would you tell them? What is your advice to them?
My advice to somebody who is struggling on YouTube isn't having the views, the success that they want, is to keep experimenting. Keep strong, keep your head up, keep getting 1% better. Find the one thing that went wrong with this video. You can see it in studio, you can see you had a big retention drop at the end, and figure out, how do I make that better for my next upload? How do I get 1% better at that? And hey, maybe it's like, I don't know how to read a retention graph. Boom, there's your 1%. I'm going to spend 1% getting better at understanding YouTube analytics. It's learning that. It's, hey, I realized that maybe my thumbnail, like I showed this to 5 different people and they were also like, and this isn't that great. Okay, I'm going to get better at 1% better at graphic design, or learning how to use AI tools to help me with this, right? I know that, again, that's a controversial topic as well, but it's these 1% improvements that continue to make you better over time. If you do that for every upload, if you just upload and you don't look at your video and you're like, oh, shucks, I'm down in the dirt about it, it didn't really go well, well, then you're never going to get better. You have to look at, how do you improve? And hey, maybe your 1% improvement is, I need to change the content that I make. I need to adjust, maybe the thing that I'm super, super, super passionate about isn't that big of a niche, right? I am somebody who loves gardening and like the homesteading type of YouTube, right? Or even like you talk about like beekeeping, like that's something that I'm super interested in
Hey,
getting
didn't
into.
expect that.
Right. But that's something that can only grow so big because there are only so many people interested in it. And so if your goal then is to, hey, I want to have 10 million subscribers, you're probably not going to do it with that niche. So get 1% better at adjusting that as well.
Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all those insights.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do it. And if I could leave the viewers with something, it's that good videos, good ideas, get views. Keep leveling up, keep getting 1% better, and you will get there. And if you found any type of value in this, hey, 1% better, subscribe to the channel.
And as always, there's an extended version of this conversation over on the Patreon, the Creator Trust Club. There we get into LinkedIn out of all things and how he became so obsessed with thumbnails in the first place. But if you want to see how one thumbnail can completely change a channel, watch this video next.